Hey, Kelleybarry from Kelleybarry Media here. So I'm down here in Key West, Florida in my hotel room, and I thought I'd make just a short video. This is the first time that I've used the Sony Alpha line of cameras for professional purposes. I rented a bunch of gear just to test it out, just to test the waters and see if it's something that I could use for professional use. And I have to say right off the bat, before I even get started with the video, yes, I totally feel that for photo and for video purposes, the Sony Alpha line of cameras works. And that's something I didn't think I was going to be possible, but it truly is. And I'll get to why here in a minute. So let's start off with the gear that I chose for this event. I chose the Sony a7S camera, the Sony a6000 camera, and I'm actually shooting with the a7S right now, so you won't see that. But the a6000 is right here. And I rented these from Borrow Lenses, and I've been using them for a long time. I love Borrow Lenses. They're a great company, and they ship it to you, and they have pretty much everything that you're gonna need. So the a6000, this was a great camera, and I didn't use it as much as I thought I would. At first, the first day, I was like, I'm gonna be using this the rest of the shoot. But I found there's certain situations, and a lot of what I was doing was in low light. It was at night. There's night events, not a whole lot of lighting, so I really wanted to try the Sony a7S and check out the potential with the low light situations that camera can offer. So the a6000, it's a great camera. I use it as my secondary, kind of my backup camera, shots that are just kind of close-ups, getting some scenic type shots, and that's why I have my Loxia on here. This is the Zeiss Loxia f2 50mm, and I actually use this lens a lot. There was a few times when I used it with the a6000, including I guess last night. That's why it's still on the camera here. But I found myself using it more with the Sony a7S. I found myself using the a7S more overall compared to this camera. There were a few times when I used the a6000 where there were some customers, they were kind of in some of these electronic golf carts, and they were running around Key West doing a scavenger hunt, and they were moving very fast. So I really wanted to check out the autofocus inside the a6000, and it did pretty well. There was a few shots that I noticed they were, the exposure was off, or it just wasn't tack sharp, the focus. But it did pretty well, and this thing fires like a 1DX. It really is very fast for the shutter, for the frame rate. So that's this. Yeah, in the Zeiss Loxia, this is the first time that I used this. A lot. I mean, I haven't really used the Loxia that much. I just haven't had the time, so I figured, with this event, why not try the Loxia and see how it does. There were some issues in terms of autofocus. Obviously, you don't have that. So, if there's some moving subjects, it's a little bit difficult to get focus because you kind of always want to be in that f2 just to get that nice bokeh in the background. But when it was a slower moving subject or a subject that wasn't really moving at all, I found that it worked very well, and I was very pleased with the image quality. The focus ring was really nice on it. The aperture ring is very nice, but like I said, I kind of just left it at f2 for the majority of the shoot because honestly, this is the only lens in the lineup that I used that can go down to f2. So here we have the Sony ZEISS 16-35 f4. This is a lens that I used extensively. When you're shooting subject matter that is similar to like a boat or a yacht, a lot of the times you want to use something like this because it makes it look bigger, especially the interiors of a boat are quite cramped. Even for a really large yacht, it gets quite cramped. And so you just kind of want to make it look a little bit larger and more powerful, and this definitely captures that power, especially for some of these nice yachts and everything. Very nice image quality. The feeling of the lens itself is very nice. It's made of a nice metal. The focus ring is nice. Everything about it is very nice. The only issue I had was when I was in manual focus for video mode, it's really difficult to capture the focus, and that's something that I'm not really used to for using my Sony a7 II with a lot of my manual focus lenses. I never really have a problem getting that focus, but I'm not really sure what it is. You just need to be so pinpoint precise to get to that focus spot, whereas with the Loxia and with my older Zeiss 85mm contacts mount and a few other lenses, I haven't had that kind of problem. So it's mostly meant for autofocus, I think. I think that's pretty much what they want you to stay in. And for video, I'm finding that it's actually very nice to use autofocus during video shooting, which I was kind of surprised about, and I'm not used to that because I've always done manual focus for video with DSLRs and in cameras. So that was very nice lens, and I'm very happy with that. So here we have the Sony, not Zeiss, but the Sony FE-70-200 f4. And this was a lens that I thought I'd be using a lot, so I rented it, but I ended up not even really using it that much. I was kind of surprised because a lot of the times the 70-200 is a go-to lens. I think the issue was I wanted to stay kind of subtle in the background for a lot of these events, and having this big monster kind of defeats the purpose of that, especially when you have the A7S, which is such a small camera. You want to kind of stay inconspicuous and you know, in the shadows, if you will, so people could just enjoy the events, and you wouldn't be, you know, in their face with a big DSLR and a big zoom lens like this. So it's a very nice lens, somewhat well made. I'm not really a big fan of these buttons. It seems like they're a lot nicer on the Canon 70-200 and the Tamron 70-200. They just don't feel, it's not a very nice click when you, and that's a lens cap that I've been having problems with that all weekend long. It just keeps falling off, but it is for an FE mount, so I'm not really sure what's going on. But getting back to the lens, so it just doesn't have a nice click compared to, you know, some of the other zoom lenses that I've used, you know, turning off the autofocus and turning on the image stabilization, that kind of stuff. But that's not a huge deal. So I rented the battery grip for the A7, and I noticed that it's a little flimsy and it doesn't feel as good, like I said, with the you know, this Sony 70-200. It just feels the quality isn't up to par in terms of like something like from Canon. I've found that the battery grip for Canon is much nicer than this. I do like these buttons actually. These click buttons are very nice, but just the overall feel, especially with the hinged door here, you know, to get your batteries on and off, it just feels kind of crappy and very cheaply made. And I think this thing runs for about 300 bucks, so I thought it'd be a little bit better quality. I'm going to probably be considering purchasing one for my Sony a7 II, and I know that you need a different one for that, so I'm going to see if that one's a little bit nicer. But overall, not a huge fan of this, but at the same time, it gets the job done because all you're really looking for is added battery power, and you know, so you can shoot vertically as well. So it's okay. So this Sony F32M flash is something that I heard about for a while before I rented it, and since renting it, I found that this is an amazing flash for a few different reasons, and I'll get into that. So as you can see, and it's an extremely small flash. I mean, compared to some of the, you know, the other ones, the Yongnuo that I use, and the Canon and the Nikon flashes, it's extremely small. And what's great about that is, you know, your Sony a7, a6000, they're such small cameras that you don't want to have that huge massive flash on top of it. It kind of defeats the purpose, just like, you know, having a massive lens on the front of the Sony a7. So this is very nice, very compact. It's very well made. I just love the feel of it. It's nicer than most other flashes I've ever felt before. And that's, you know, considering it's about 300 bucks, that's probably a good thing. But, you know, it only takes 2 AA batteries, which is really nice. They last forever. I never had to change them, and I was shooting for hours with, you know, at half power a lot of the times. The menu system on the back is really nice. It's just pretty much an on-off switch. It's kind of confusing, and if you don't make sure that you know that those dots line up, a lot of times you'd think that up is on and down is off, but that's not the case. It's actually the opposite. Kind of weird, but it's not a deal breaker in the least. Easy to switch over modes. You know, I always shoot in manual, so getting over to manual took a few minutes to figure out, but once you figure it out, it's no big deal. But it's just a great flash. I'm going to show you what it looks like on the a6000. I never used it on the a6000, but I'm sure you could if you wanted to, for all those people that don't have an a7 but have an a6000. So as you can see, I mean, it looks really nice on the camera. It's like perfectly sized. I mean, if you had a Yongnuo or if you had a Canon or a Nikon speedlight on here, it would look massive compared to this camera. So very cool, and I totally recommend this flash. It's great. It's the only problem is it's pretty pricey. So I mean, that's why I always talk up the Yongnuos. They're like 60 bucks compared to 300 bucks for this, but honestly, I'm considering purchasing one of these just because it's such a perfect size for the Sony a7 and Alpha line of cameras. So overall, I found the Sony a7S a perfect camera for professional use. Granted, it's probably not the best camera if you're going to be using it for very fast-moving subjects. That's why it's always nice to have something like this a6000 to back it up. But at the same time, it was just great. I mean, almost 95 to 97% of the time, I found the autofocus to work perfectly, even in low light, and I even turned off the little red light that kind of helps capture the focus. I didn't have that going, but at the same time, I was always able to capture focus. So, you know, a lot of what I was shooting was a group of people getting a shot with everybody, and you focus on that one person and then frame your shot, and it never had a problem focusing. So I was very happy with that. The size and the weight, my shoulder doesn't hurt that much, and when I shoot with the 5D Mark III on an adventure like this, down and having to travel through, you know, airports and walking around cities and things like that, it's just so much nicer to have smaller gear, lighter gear. It makes a world of difference, to be honest. And I'm thinking going forward that I might even reduce the amount of gear even further, just to lighten the load a little bit more. But overall, I'm very happy with the Sony a7S. The image quality is great. I never had a problem with cropping. There was a few images that I was just testing out to see how far I could crop without losing major resolution, and I never had any problem with that. So the 12 megapixels inside the camera isn't a big deal. And I kind of thought it was, and I read that everybody's like, it's not going to be a big deal, but every once in a while I like to crop the heck out of a picture, you know, just to I find one thing about the image that I want to keep and crop the rest out, and I haven't had a problem with that with the Sony a7 so far. So if you have any questions about this gear that I've shown you today, or anything else about videography or photography, definitely let me know, and please subscribe to my channel for more information and more videos like this. So thank you very much. Have a good day.